Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Glasp Talk. Today we are so excited to have Nick Adams with us. So Nick is a seasoned entrepreneur and investor, currently the founder of Quill Meetings, a platform transforming how meetings are run by making them truly work for you. And he also serves as a venture partner at Ame Cloud Ventures, and where he has spent over a decade supporting visionary founders in the data-centric world, with deep ties to Jerry Yan, the co-founder of Yahoo, and his investment network, and with a robust background in international business development, product management, and startup leadership, and including co-founding tech ventures like Entrip and Evolius. Nick brings a wealth of experience bridging East and West in the tech ecosystem. And today, we will dive into Nick's journey through Silicon Valley and beyond, his insights into startup innovation, and how he envisions the future of productive collaboration. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. So, first of all, you're co-founder of Quill Meetings, and we want to know what inspired you to start the company and what problem are you aiming to solve?
Yeah. So what inspired me was a friend and I, who is now my co-founder, spent some time hacking on projects together over the summer of 2023. I was actually interested to go into Hollywood and pursue a career in drone videography in 2023, but then GPT-4 came along. And in April 2023, GPT-4 was quite a big moment for the world. It was the moment when the world said, okay, these are not just text generation bots. They start to look like they can reason a little bit. And it got very exciting. So for years before that, I was working on a product internally for myself at Ame that did meeting scheduling. So I was using regular expression-based, simple just decision trees to decide what people meant when they set a time in their meeting and figure out how to schedule a meeting with them without me having to type an email reply, because I did a lot of meetings as a VC. And so when GPT-4 came along, I was interested because it felt like for the first time, you could do this with proper AI without having to train your own model. And so a friend and I were equally passionate about the possibilities of a powerful model like GPT-4 with open access. And we started hacking on a project over the summer of 23. And the project itself, we never really felt like was ready for production and ready for customers. But towards the end of the summer, I attended YC Demo Day in September 23, and I took audio transcripts, just basically audio recordings of some of the meetings that I had, and I put them through a local version of Whisper. And Whisper is an OpenAI released open source transcription module. And I was blown away with the results. I did not realize that you could transcribe audio into really quite accurate text locally on your Mac. And that blew me away. And that in conjunction with the new LLMs that were coming out at the time, like Claude 2, meant that you could take the transcript and you could throw it through an LLM and you suddenly get notes that were better than any notes I'd ever taken on a startup. And that was exciting because it felt really empowering. This was a technology that was suddenly within arm's reach of millions and millions of people that it was never before. And so Mike and I decided to form a company around it. And that's what we do. We basically use Whisper locally. We transcribe audio into text, and then we use cloud LLMs in a privacy-centric way to turn it into really great notes and other kinds of outputs. So that's how it started.
Yeah, I really love it, and I've used it, and what I like is like you transcribe, what we are talking about in the meeting and summarize data, then create a to-do list if we need, and then automatically, and I can chat with my notes, and that's a great UX, and I think I love it. Thank you.
Our philosophy, when you take it up a level, obviously my motivational reasons for starting Quill were on the technology level, but if you take a step up and talk about the sort of more visionary level, obviously there were a lot of note-taking competitors when we started already. However, they were really focused on transcription and not really great notes. And so we started Quill with the idea that the transcript isn't as important as what you do on top of it. and all the things you can generate on top of a transcript. And so Quill's entire user experience and UI is built around the idea that you have a meeting, which is effectively the source of truth, which is the transcript. But then on top of it, you can do lots of cool things cheaply, fast, and very high quality. And so, yeah, we are basically an LLM first note-taking company, and being local means that you don't need a bot in the meeting. And it also means that all of the data and audio stays locally, which we really love. So we are unique in that respect. And we just think we are the best note taker as well. Obviously, a lot of people will say they're the best note taker, but our customers speak for us. They flock to us and we're growing fast. So I think we're doing something right.
I think so, yes. Thank you. And at the same time, nowadays so many AI tools and note-taking apps, and then also like audio transcription service. And the one is like a Granola, and it's an AI note-taking app. And I think it's I think they are in the similar space, I guess. But what I realized was, the difference between Quill Meeting and also Granola was like, in case of Granola, when I speak in English, they transcribe. But when I speak in Japanese, because I speak Japanese, and they don't transcribe, so that I cannot track what I'm talking in Japanese. And then sometimes I join the meeting, sometimes we speak 2 or 3 languages and they don't take notes. But in case of Quill Meetings, and they take notes, even if I speak Japanese, other languages, it takes notes and then summarize later, and then I can see transcript. And that's what I was so impressed. I was so impressed, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, we think about it in terms of how can we build the best possible product. And for us, building the best possible product means that for all kinds of different people in different circumstances, the product just seems to be magical out of the box. It's very difficult to do that well, because you have to think about all the different ways people are going to use your product. And of course, with meeting transcription, language is one of them. It's not trivial, some of the stuff we do. Whisper does support different languages, but we also do clever things to figure out which language you're speaking. And in fact, just last week, we released automatic language detection. So we will, even during the meeting, switch the language of transcription depending on what you're saying. And to do all this and not only do it locally, not only do it well, but also locally is not trivial. But ultimately, we hope the customer just feels like the product works great and that we can deal with all that technology stuff. So sometimes I get a bit carried away, talking about the technology and getting excited about what we've built, because it is difficult. But ultimately, we do all this so that our customers don't have to worry about it.
I see. And at the same time, this is kind of another question. I don't know if you can talk or share, but since you are the now currently board observer at Zoom Video Communications, right? And seems like Zoom is also in. Oh, by the way, we are using Zoom, but we are in the similar. I mean, Quill and Zoom are in the similar space, right? I assume. No, maybe no. But I wonder, if you can, even how to say, be in the board of Zoom, and can you start a company? Or because, yeah, I was wondering if it's okay for the company. And
Oh, I'm not on the board anymore. I left the board when Zoom went public.
okay, sorry.
Yeah. This would be a conflict for sure if I was on the board. No, I left the board a long, long time ago. Eric and I remain in touch and we're friends, but I watched the journey and was basically along for the ride for most of the years I was on the board. I learned a ton from Eric, and I hope that I was able to provide some value somewhere, but the journey was incredible. We invested in Zoom in December 2012, and watched as they grew very fast. And even then, people didn't really know the name until COVID. But Zoom was an amazing journey. It's a naturally viral product. So Eric's done very well there. And I think the product is amazing and the technology is amazing. The space-wise, I think all these products, even like Otter and others, have tried to bolt on note-taking and done it and tried to do it well. And I'm sure they're all evolving all the time. We've started the product from the ground up to be LLM first and to be very modern and feel like magic right away. And we approach it from a slightly different perspective from Zoom. From Zoom, they're trying to create a product that deals with all the notes you have within Zoom, and that makes sense. But a lot of meetings happen outside of Zoom, and a lot of people's lives are in real life. They're in conference rooms, they're in Teams and Meets and Discord and etc. So there's a lot of different ways people pull in audio and conversations, and Zoom will cover some of those, but won't be able to cover all of them in the way we can. And also, bring people together to a product which is just about that. Whereas as soon as you start adding features onto a product like Zoom, you have to dig around to find what you want within that platform, and probably the user experience isn't great anyway once you're there. Whereas for Quill, we're all about just doing that one thing really, really well. So there is some overlap. There's a lot of overlap with a lot of companies, but I think that we found our niche doing notes and local notes really, really well, and for all platforms. So I think that's the differentiation.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm curious, like, why did you start with desktop application? Because local and privacy are important, but at the same time, letting user install desktop application and spread it is pretty difficult in terms of growth, right? So how do you, think about it? You can grow it later, even if it's a desktop application, or do you have a plan to make a browser extension or web application that works on the browser?
Good question. That's a really good question. When we think about the product, we wanted to create the best product possible, and we could only create the best product possible when it was a standalone app. On top of that, some of the transcription stuff we do, it isn't possible to do in the browser. So that's another reason. I think these days with AI, it makes more sense to install a desktop app. You noticed, OpenAI have an app, so does Anthropic. And increasingly, these apps are starting to use tools on your computer. I believe that the way we're going is more and more tools and useful products will be desktop apps, standalone apps in the AI world. They're right in front of you at all times and easy to use, and don't require you to open a browser tab and navigate to a SaaS website. And yeah, I do think the security aspect is huge. Not everyone cares about it, but there's some enterprises in particular really do care a lot. And so for them, this architecture actually makes a lot more sense to them. So there are obviously positives and negatives, but we are not seeing that it's causing an impediment to growth. I think people are willing to install an application if it gives them a lot of benefit. So yeah, but it's a good question.
Oh, okay, thank you. And so eventually, local LLM works on the desktop application. So is that your vision?
Yeah, let's see where things get to. The models that are out now, they can generate sort of bad notes slowly. So we have two things to figure out. We need to get the models that can run locally to create really great content. And it needs to be equal to what's in the cloud, because ultimately I think people will prefer to get the better note than the more local note. And so there's that. And then on top of that, it's got to run fast. So it can't be generating 10 tokens a second. It has to be generating hundreds or if not more tokens a second. And it has to be, the third thing is it has to work on most people's computers. And so in this case, I think we're going to wait a while for this, but we're always looking at the newest models and trying to figure out if there's something there. We are going to have something exciting in that respect later this year, though. So you can stay tuned for that. We are working on ways to enable people to use local models if they want for the LLM side.
Did you launch it like, or TechCrunch or Big Launch or something like that? Or are you still kind of testing?
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. We haven't done a lot of big launches. We're really spreading by word of mouth. We haven't done a lot of press. We have some LinkedIn announcements. But yeah, no, the product it's not in beta, it's out, but we haven't done a lot of press around things yet. Yeah.
Okay.
But do you have plans to public big launch?
I think the way to launch companies these days has changed. I don't think it's all about one big launch. I think you need to continually throw out, announcements and launches of sort of products or features, and that's how you get you keep this sort of like rolling thunder attention. That's my sense. So we sort of constantly have plans to do that, but we're not going to have like one big launch, I don't think.
I see. Yeah, and I think that makes sense, because I remember Andrew Chen once published a post about always be launching. Founders,
Exactly.
nowadays, big launch one day doesn't work, so you should always be launching something so that people remember about your product, and I think eventually they start using it or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. But for the current growth, and how and who are you using your product, or who are referring to whom? Could you tell us a little bit about your current user growth scene?
Yeah, we built Quill to be a general tool for all industries. So it's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it means anyone can go ahead and use the product and get a lot of value from it, whatever you do in your life. But it's also a curse because there's less focus. I think we're finding a lot of growth in areas like executive coaching, recruiting, sales, and marketing, as well as obviously founders and solopreneurs and VC finance. So there's a whole bunch of different industries where you get a few users and they get excited and they share it with other users in that industry. And that's happening in quite a few different spaces right now. So that's kind of the user base.
I see. But have you found or figured out any interesting use case or you didn't expect? But
That's
oh wow, there's an interesting use case or something like that.
Yeah, I think I wasn't. Yeah, I will tell you one thing. This is a slightly different answer, but I think it's an interesting point. We are finding that where we thought verticalized players, verticalized solutions would beat us, we're finding that companies are still adopting us. And I find that fascinating and very encouraging. I think it's because they realize that Quill is much more powerful than just a workflow around one industry. So I can't give the name of any particular customer here, but let's talk about potentially recruiting. You know, in recruiting, you'd expect that there's a workflow company around note taking that just does everything related to your ATS and recruiting. But imagine a customer that decides to go with Quill eventually, potentially, because they prefer that their users actually have a more generalizable product that can do all kinds of different things for their internal team. So I really think of Quill as a product that's kind of the future of the way we work, as much as it is a note taker. And it's encouraging to see that our customers agree. We've got another big enterprise customer where I thought they would just onboard their sales team because the sales team are the ones having all these conversations with external companies. In fact, they onboarded the entire company and then grew fast, and everyone in the company now uses Quill. And I find that just really encouraging. It feels like we're building a product that's more about the future of work than it is just about note taking from a Zoom call, right?
I see. Switching the topic to your like career and the VC part, and you were the managing director at Ame Cloud Ventures, right?
One of two, yeah.
Yeah. So you were investor and switched to founder. I mean, started with founder and VC founder, and which is your preferred role? You see different things. Like as an investor, you see a lot of startups and what's happening in the market. As a founder, you focus on one thing, and yeah. How do you see the difference?
Yeah, it's fun. It's both are fun. Both have a lot of advantages. Both are privileged careers in different ways, right? It's a great privilege to build a company. It's also a great privilege to invest in companies. My sense is the cool thing about being VC is you get to meet a lot of people and you get to see some of the best people in the world at doing what they do, and that's such a privilege. So you're always pushed. You also see, 5% of what you invest in, even companies that you do invest in, end up being telling the future. So you kind of see into the future too, which is nice. And I like that. The problem with being a VC is, as a builder, I've always been a builder. So I've been hacking on my own projects. I learned JavaScript and PHP when I was in college doing electronic engineering. I was more interested in building things. And for me, the web, as it was then, Web 2.0, or the beginning of dynamic websites in early 2000s, was more exciting to me than electronics because I could see what I was building. And so as a builder, being a VC was challenging at times because all you can really do, you're kind of like a coach, right? You're on the sidelines, you're watching the players play, and it's kind of fun to watch them play, but you're not on the pitch. You're not feeling the ups and downs in the same way, and you can shout and scream all you want, and hopefully they're not listening to you too much as a VC, but it's not the same as being on the field. And I think that's for someone who likes creating things and likes playing the game, that was always a little bit of a disadvantage. But I did have a lot of side projects. I built the CRM for us internally at Ame, and I also built this scheduling bot I talked about at the beginning. And so I found ways to get my creative outlets and to build things. But being a founder is different. This time it's more involved than the first company I started, where things are working better, so there's more work. And there's a lot of building, which is fun, but there's a lot of other things, and there's a lot of ups and downs. And I definitely, last year, it was quite cool to sort of realize I worked harder last year than I think I had done in my entire life. And that was kind of both a bit scary and draining, but also exciting for me. So yeah, there's advantages to both, I think. And I'm enjoying the journey. And maybe one day I'll go back into VC.
Interesting. So then how did you decide to join Ame Cloud? Actually, I'm curious about the story behind why you joined, what happened, and Jerian reach out to you, or yeah, I was curious.
Yeah, that was honestly just pure luck. I came to Silicon Valley in 2012, and with my partner, and the idea for me was to go and work in product management. I wanted to learn a new trade. I hadn't really done product management. I'd built a company before, but not sort of proven product person. So I came to Silicon Valley and started looking for jobs. We didn't know anyone. We had a few relatives locally. I started applying and getting rejected by a bunch of companies. I was interested in working in clean tech. I was probably at the tail end of that being a good idea. And the person I was working for in China at the time when I moved here had me do a little bit of consulting with him and introduced me to Jerry, who he knew. And so I met Jerry with a few other people in an afternoon, and it was fun. We just talked about big data. Back then, big data was big. It was 2012, and Hadoop had just started, spun out of Yahoo, and you've got kind of the cloud is beginning to really take shape. It was 3 or 4 or 5 years after AWS, and people were building big data systems, and they were taking the systems that had been built as ad tech backends within the large tech companies like Google and Yahoo, and they were going out and turning them into data lakes for companies and turning them into enterprise companies. So that was an exciting time, and we were talking a little bit about that. And then I went to actually Mike's wedding, my co-founder's wedding in Ohio, and it was early September or late August 2012. And I got an email from Jerry that I'll never forget. And I really did not expect this. I had this sort of vague notion that I might do something as an angel or as a VC in Silicon Valley, but I really didn't expect it or want it necessarily. He reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, while you consider your opportunities in Silicon Valley, why don't we talk about how you could be helpful in what I'm doing?" I was kind of blown away by that email, and we went and had a chat for an hour and a half, just he and I in his office. And after that, I still remember that day. I went to watch The Dark Knight Returns after that. I have a vivid memory of that entire day because it was obviously the first time I'd met one-on-one with Jerry. It was a lovely chat for about an hour and 50 minutes. And after that, he said, just come hang out in the office and, give yourself whatever title you'd like. And he's like, he asked me what I got paid when I was in China, and it was very little. And he gave me more than that, which is still very little for my age, but I didn't care at all. And I hung out in the office and started doing stuff for him, whatever he wanted, right? And that was how it started. I think I was incredibly fortunate. I think part of it was I had some experience in China and I did speak Chinese. And maybe I'd been a builder before. He liked people who were technical and understood the product and technology side more. I have no idea. I've never asked him to this day why he decided to hire me. I do think he thought it was a good idea after a few years because we did do some cool things together. So I'm pretty sure he wouldn't say he regretted it, but I don't know why initially he had that feeling. And I'll always be thankful and feel incredibly lucky about it.
But you're still in touch with him, right? Even after you left. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's an investor in our company, and every week we have partners meetings, and I join occasionally. So yeah, I'm still very much in touch with the team. And Jeff is my colleague who joined only 6 months or a year after I did, and Rich is there now too. So Jerry has a team around him, and I'm part of that family, I would say. Jerry's a very family man, and so I feel like I'm part of that family still.
Maybe next time you could ask him, "Hey, do you remember when you decided to hire me?" And
I will one day. I'm sure I will. Over a glass of wine. Jerry loves wine. He's a great wine guy. Maybe over a glass of wine one day, I'll ask him that question then.
And how big was the team when started? So the Ame Cloud.
Jerry bought his long-term admin and office manager and personal assistant, you could say, from Yahoo with him. Her name's Kathy, and she's absolutely wonderful. And she's still with him now, sort of 18 or 20 years later. And that was the team when I arrived. So it was Kathy and Jerry, and I was the first investment sort of team member. Yeah. So it was just the two of us. Again, really great privilege and really fun. Yeah.
Mm. I see. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, and yeah, I also want to know the answer from Jerry. So why this decided to hire
Yeah,
you?
I'm sure
Yeah,
you after
yeah,
talking to me for 20 minutes, you can't figure it out. I can't figure it out either. I think you're right. There's some like I don't know what it is. But you know, the fun thing about working with someone like Jerry is that you you have a boss who's also a mentor in many ways. And it's not because they sit down and give you mentorship sessions every few weeks. It's just because watching them work and watching them think and watching the way they make decisions and how they conduct themselves with other people and all that stuff is such an amazing way to learn. And I really, really appreciated that for the early years in particular, working with Jerry. It was really so great. And obviously the access we had was amazing. And you know, the idea for me and Jeff and others, you know, and Rich was to sort of carve out our own path as well, not just rely on the network, not just rely on the Yahoo connections, but to go out into the world and make a name for ourselves. And so that became kind of the goal. And I think, you know, most of us, we all did that in our own way. And we all did deals that, you know, but I remember the first deal I did where Jerry had never met the company. I was, or had even heard of them, you know, before. And I thought that was kind of my first, like, oh, that was cool. That was one that I did that, you know, that kind of I bought in myself. And obviously Jerry was a big part of our brand, but it was great to sort of start to make, you know, make our own hay. But it was always so great working with him for that mentorship reason, I think.
And
and
as an investor, okay, as an investor, I'm curious about your like investment thesis at the time. So that was, I think, 2012, and now then
Yeah.
until you stopped like at 2020. And has your investment thesis changed over time or evolved over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we should talk more about that. So Ame Cloud Ventures, Ame, AME means rain in Japanese. And and Jerry's wife is Japanese. So there's a Japanese connection there, and then there always has been for Jerry. We were all about data. We started, as I said, at the beginning of the Hadoop cycle, and Jerry had seen how data-driven decisions and data lakes and big data and even beginning to train models, pre-AI, really, honestly, pre-AI or pre-AI going mainstream. I'm not going to say that Hinton and other great thinkers were not working on some of the paradigms that we now use in all of our models in AI, but the paradigm in sort of mature tech was statistics and data lakes and some simple models, and some machine learning was beginning to happen too, right? And that was our thesis. If you've got data, you know, create value from it. If you don't have data, make sure you have it. So our whole thesis was like finding companies that were data driven and were becoming data nexus in their space or industry, or were, you know, working with data in some way. And the other differentiator that we sort of double clicked on was defensible technology and deep tech. So finding companies that had something that was IP first and defensible or deep first, and finding technologists and dreamers who are building something that was difficult and frontier tech, you could call it. So those are the two pillars of what we were investing in the early days. And I think largely that remains true for Ame. I think they're still very data driven. Obviously, we had this huge shift in 2023 with AI, right? 2022, 23 with AI. So that has kind of brought a whole new raft of opportunities. It's kind of cheap to say that we were in AI before it was cool, but it's kind of true. I would say it's different. It's a very different kind of AI now, but we were. I mean, we were investing in robotics and AI and machine learning companies way before it was cool, for sure. There were only a handful of other VCs interested in this stuff, you know, Data Collective. You know, obviously there were a few other VCs that were doing things, but we were getting our hands dirty. It was sometimes really crazy and you know, far out research projects. But that was what we did. So we did companies that were doing new kinds of food tech. We did a lot of robotics. We did companies that were doing data-driven biology, synthetic biology, as well as, you know, infrastructure and SaaS and things like that. So, and we're very people-driven too. So another big thing, I would say, if there were three pillars, there was kind of frontier tech, data-driven companies, and then kind of people. And so if we found someone we liked, we would want to pull the trigger on them, unless they were doing something maybe in advertising or consumer that we didn't like as much. So it was really very people driven. And so, you know, Eric who came into the office in 2012 for the first time was very much a team bet, a person bet, as well as SaaS, obviously. But yeah.
and regarding team, and meaning like founders, like and so including early employees maybe, but what trait or character or personality do you look for, or did you look for at the time for founders? Or is that a Stanford grad and for sure, they must be smart, but besides those,
you're talking about potential investees, right? So potential founders investing,
potential, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like dating. You shouldn't necessarily have like a list of things that you're looking for in a partner, because then you might find one thing that doesn't match and then you say no, or you might find that everything matches quite well and you say yes. I think there's a lot more to it than that. Everyone has to carve their own path when it comes to being an investor and making decisions. Some firms have particular processes, obviously, but ultimately it's up to the individual who decides that they're going to talk about this company at partners meeting, or maybe even bring their company in, and what causes a partner to do that. So I think it's different for everyone, right? So at Ame, we had the process of if one of us really liked something, unless there was a veto from Jerry, effectively, we could do it. So it was actually very partner driven. We were quite autonomous, which was really great. And that was very empowering. My process was, and I think it evolved, but I would sit across the table from someone, and what you're trying to do is decide, is this someone who I would work for? Is this someone I would buy from? And is this someone who I think that the best investors I know in the Valley would back as well, right? And I think and most importantly is probably the first one, right? Would I work for this person? The best people aren't just smart, they are charismatic, they are well-rounded, they are authentic, and they are colored in different ways. They have all kinds of different, stories in their past that add to their story themselves. And so as someone's conversation unfolds, and it usually doesn't take that long, there's kind of like a moment where you're like, wow, this person is quite impressive. And impressive basically means I would potentially work for them. I think they can convince customers to buy from them, and I think investors are going to want to back this person going forward. And then you look at all the other things, right? You look at the technology, and but often, I think a lot of investors are doing what I'm doing, and then they're filling in the gaps with all these other things that they need to get across the line. Ultimately, so much of it is about people, and I think you can get, you could say that, what if it's a good person and a bad idea? Well, honestly, that doesn't happen very often, because good people don't generally work with bad ideas. So it tends to be that if you like the person sitting across from you, you can start to get to the next stage. And I think that was the main hurdle. That was the main sort of gate, I guess, when I was a VC. But everyone has a different way of thinking about it. I'm a product and a technology person, right? So it was also easy for me to sort of start to say, well, ask more difficult questions, or ask even just slightly probing questions about how things worked. And if I felt like I was thinking of things that they were not thinking of, then that was not a good thing, right? So I wanted to be, they need to be ahead of me thinking about things. And finally, the way people communicate is very interesting too. So what I found is that the smartest people and the best communicators, they would understand very quickly where I was at when I was listening to them. And then they would move the conversation faster forward, much faster, and they would skip things, and they would bring things to my level and try and push me even harder, right? And I really enjoyed that, and I think that's the mark of a smart person who's a good communicator. You'd be surprised how many people who might seem like good founders, but they will just go through the pitch exactly as the pitch is, rather than adapt their conversation style or the communication content to the person they're sitting across the room from. And I just think that that's weak, So there was another small signal, but it's all about people, I think.
I see. In that sense, so how was the founder of Zoom, so Eric? So how do you see him?
Yeah, Eric was introduced to Jerry by I think Dan or Bill Tai, Dan Scheinman or Bill Tai. Thank you guys if you ever watch this. We've said thank you many times, but had many dinners together. Eric came into the office and was nervous, and he was excited to meet Jerry. Eric is a very confident person. I think Eric is one of these people who, from a relatively young age, probably mid-30s, really began to truly understand the way the world works, and the way that engineering teams work, and the way that business works. in many ways, Eric should have been made head of WebEx when he was there, and that might have actually stopped him going and creating Zoom. Eric was already a leader within WebEx, right? He was basically the first engineer, and he built the engineering team within WebEx in China mostly. But he didn't just build the engineering team. He understood the way the world works. So when he came to us, it was very obvious there was a confidence there that was going beyond just, oh, I'm a geek building a better product out of WebEx. He understood the nuances of go-to-market and how to sell and how to, drive enterprise customer growth. And actually, the first sales guy he hired was great. And Greg eventually left after the IPO, but built the company up from 0 to 100 million ARR. And so we got a sense of someone who was very well-rounded and who was kind of wise for his age. And I think on top of that, the product just worked. One of the contentious points internally for us with Zoom was at the time there was BlueJeans, and personally, I believe that the future of video conferencing would be web-based and would be on the browser and not in a standalone application, actually. And Kay, you asked earlier about this. Zoom did very well with a standalone application. You can get so much more done. You have more access to underlying processes and services on the PC or the Mac that you just don't get in the browser. You can control the experience a lot better. And I think that's an insight that Eric had in his wisdom when he started Zoom that we didn't initially agree with because we didn't know it as well, but I think we became confident with it as we used it. Jerry, we had a partners meeting, which shortly after we met Eric, where we tried Zoom while Jerry was in his plane. So Jerry was in his plane on weak satellite internet, and it still worked. And that to us was a big sort of tick in the box of like, wow, this is robust, right? They figured out a lot of network robustness here. This is quite impressive. But I remember at the end of that meeting, that first meeting with Jerry and I, Eric was he'll probably hate me for saying this, but he had like a very sweaty like underarm because he was very nervous to meet Jerry. Jerry was like his idol, right? And I think it's so nice when you have someone who you look up to, but ultimately, definitely, certainly for me and maybe for Jerry too, kind of flipped, or at least people rise up to meet their heroes, and then they often will rise further in other ways. And I think that's really wonderful. I think that's definitely what Eric did. I still can't believe, honestly, I was part of that journey to see Eric kind of pitching to Jerry almost like his sort of, I don't know, like his junior, and then to become the very successful business person Eric's become, and watch that in 10 years is just a wonderful, wonderful journey to spectate, right?
Interesting. And in that sense, I was curious, things you regret. I mean, let's say in case of Zoom, you invest in so many companies and you went through so many companies and decide, which company you invest in. But let's say in case of Zoom, I don't know how many X, 100X or 1000X, I think you invested in. But let's say if you invested in 1 million, but if you invested in 10 million, the return was, 10X or more, right? So in that sense, do you have any regrets that, we should have invested more?
No, of course. Everyone says that. Of course, everyone should always invest more in the winner. Sometimes you should look at that kind of situation and say, rather than say we should have invested more, which we should have, you should say, how do we pick another one of those? I think sometimes in venture people look at the lost upside or the downside too much. What they should do is look at the gained upside and then double down on that and figure out how to do more of that. So I think regrets, they serve a purpose in some ways because they teach us stories, and ultimately we probably should have invested more in Zoom. But the fact is, how do you find the next Zoom and the next Zoom? I don't think you're really good at venture until you can do it like 2 or 3 times in a row. And so that is the learning. The learning is Zoom worked. Why? How do we find more like that? And that's and be thankful. Really, be very grateful for that we didn't pass. Right. That would have been the problem. That would have been a real regret. So, however many dollars in versus dollars out you get, the point is Zoom was a massive winner for everyone involved. And I think the point of venture should be to find as many of those as you can and not to worry too much about everything else.
In that sense, any investment you missed, but you should have invested? I don't know, maybe tons or...
There's so many. Oh my God. So yesterday, there's so many, and sometimes we laugh at each other internally because I'm like, I wanted to invest in this and we didn't. And the fact is that there's lots of things that I would have wanted to invest in that wouldn't have worked out. And there's things that they wanted to invest in that, I said no to, whatever I didn't like. So we all make mistakes, and they're kind of group mistakes. So yesterday, Mathilde will not remember me, but or maybe she will. But yesterday I signed up for Front, which is a service which provides like unified inbox for various platforms. And it was funny. It was the first time I'd ever signed up for Front, because obviously as a company, in Ame I didn't need to do it, but for Quill, where you're now using Front. And I just remembered that was one that we missed, right? I saw Mathilde when it was a 12 million pre, and I remember meeting her at a coffee shop in San Carlos and Pete's. I remember exactly where we sat. And I won't go further as to why we didn't invest in that company. It was probably as much my fault as anyone else's, but that was one of the many misses. And there's so many. The good thing about misses is at least you saw them, right? If you're not seeing misses, then something's really wrong with your deal flow. So you should also take stock in the good things. You should look at the good things, right?
Interesting. Do you think that a lot of investors or VC are learning from the missed opportunities? I mean, learning from success is much easier and easy to analyze, but at the same time, if you miss something really big, and I think and if you don't learn from your failures, and that's the problem, right? So
yeah, there's a lot of problems with VC. Another problem is that it takes a very long time to learn. So it takes 5 or 10 years to learn because the cycle is very long. Yeah, I think you need to learn from your mistakes. I think you need to. I mean, I have maybe, and this might be slightly different to my team, but I feel very strongly that you shouldn't worry about the companies you invested in that went to zero. I think you should only worry about companies that do really, really well, and make sure you don't miss those. And so, that is kind of my philosophy, is that it's really all about the winners, because the winners cancel out everything else big time when they win big. And yeah, you should be looking at companies that you saw that became big companies and you passed on, and figure out why did you pass? And was it a good pass, or did you pass actually for the right reasons? And then maybe the market changed, and maybe you were right at the time, and then you just were unlucky, right? Or were you just wrong at the time? What was it exactly that made you pass? So much, guys, of VC is feeling. And I think if you feel really excited about something, sometimes it's just right to do it. If you feel excited about something, but you don't quite know why, then you don't do it, and the company becomes big. Then the learning should be, next time I'm excited about something, I should do it. It doesn't even need to be some data-driven thing where they didn't tick the right box in a spreadsheet, or the right match with what you wanted, thesis didn't come out, right? It should just be, I'm quite an intuitive person, so I maybe over-index on this sometimes too, to a fault, but I really do think that gut feeling it counts for a lot. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just kind of switching topic, but you mentioned that Jerry, the founder of Yahoo, was your mentor and boss, and you learned a lot of things from him. What is the best learning, from him, or did you get any advice from him that remembers?
Yeah, what is the best learning from Jerry?
Or repeated advice, always
Yeah.
he's saying XYZ or something like that.
Yeah, Jerry taught us a lot through osmosis, and then not so much implicitly. And she's a very humble person. I like that a lot. I think some of the things are not so much about business and just about how to be a good human. Jerry's very famous and rich, but is extremely humble and kind as well. He doesn't seek attention in any way, doesn't want it. Really downplays it, actually. Would prefer to avoid attention. And I really respect that and like that a lot. And also, he's very kind to people he's just met as well. He's very patient and just a very good person. And I think seeing someone be very successful and also a very good person is a sort of nice reminder that wealth and fame don't always, cause people to become more difficult to work with, or sort of more negative experience with them. And that's always been an amazing thing. Other than that, Jerry was very empowering to us. Like, he really gave us a lot of autonomy, which I really respected as well, and trusted us. I remember the first time I was in a meeting in a group with Jerry and Zod and Ash, and these, Ash was the head of product at Yahoo, Zod was a CTO, and they were investing on their own at the same time. So we were meeting partners meeting. And I remember at the very beginning of my time with Jerry, at some point they were talking about a company and they all just turned to me and said, "What do you think?" And I was kind of blown away because I come from China where things are much more top down, and someone as young and inexperienced as me would not be asked what they thought. And I kind of paused. I had an opinion, but I paused almost out of shock because I was surprised to be asked and have the room go silent to hear my response. So I think that kind of autonomy and being given a lot of trust by Jerry was also like a really big part of the journey for me, and really great. So I think if you find employees you like, you need to like basically fully trust them. That feels like a good learning as well. Yeah, Jerry's incredibly smart though. So you just have to think faster when you're working with smart people and be more prepared. And it forces you to be a better person and work harder too. He also works incredibly hard. Jerry and Eric are the two people in my life who respond to emails faster than almost anyone else I know in my entire life. And I do not think that's a coincidence that basically the two billionaires who I know best are the two fastest email responders, right? Jerry prefers lowercase sometimes, which is funny, but they don't stop moving. They keep moving and they keep their mind active and they keep working. And I think that is a lesson for everyone. It's a tiny lesson, but very important, right?
Is that him, really him, or is that AI?
Which one? It's definitely Jerry, yeah. Yeah.
And did you write down those advices and learnings on somewhere? And also, did you publish it somewhere?
No, this is maybe I've taken this too much to heart, but with Jerry, again, this sort of don't try and get attention thing kind of sunk in quite heavily. So yeah, I haven't done a lot of writing about these things or anything like that. Feels like these days everyone is trying to get attention, and trying to participate in that for me is quite draining. So I don't do a lot of like blogging or stuff like that. Maybe I should do more, but what do you think? Should I do
think
more?
so. Yeah, I want to learn from him, learn from you. So from smart people and good human beings. And in terms of increasing the number of people who have good mind, so we need to tell their story, right? So, but if knowledge is isolated, so we cannot access it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I think the best learnings, though, maybe the most important education is to teach people how to learn, because ultimately the most important lessons don't get taught, they get learned by experience. So maybe the most important thing is to say, well, to figure out these things, you have to go and fail and succeed and try it yourself. And then those are when you really learn something important, I think.
Yeah. And it's impressive that you back to become founder and doing something and trying something new. And that's amazing. And then I wanted to ask this question. So since nowadays, thanks to AI, so there is a word, vibe coding and also vibe revenue, meaning using AI tools. It's vibe coding, vibe revenue, and it's for AI that startups or company using AI. It's kind of easier to make money at the beginning. So in that sense, some people say, oh, you shouldn't, as a startup founder, you shouldn't raise much money, and because you can make revenue using AI, and also AI like using Casa, Windsurf, you can save your time. I mean, improve your productivity so that you don't need to hire a bunch of software engineers at this moment. And what's your thoughts on fundraising for startup? Because you have experience on both, right? As an investor side and the founder side, and would you recommend raising a bunch of money, or try to keep the team small and raise less money and make revenue?
Yeah. Personally, I like small teams quite a bit. It's more fun. There's less politics. It's more efficient. I think there's some things you just can't do with a really small team. Enterprise go-to-market is going to remain one of those for a while, for sure. So I think the question is dependent on the entrepreneur. Some entrepreneurs maybe maybe deciding that this is something they want to do. They want a path where they want to have a big team and raise a lot of money. Sometimes though, if you raise money and you grow the team ahead of the product market fit, it can be challenging. I've seen that a lot. Sometimes large capital raises can kill companies as well. So you've got to be a bit careful. We definitely live in a different world. I don't think you can prompt a company into an existence, even though you can do a lot of stuff with Cursor and AI now. You still need to be able to basically call the AI out when it's wrong. And so you need to have some skills there. I think we are getting more efficient for sure. So you won't need as many people on the technical team as before. And there is an advantage to have a smaller technical team. I definitely think that's true. It's exciting. I don't know where it goes. Fundraising wise, a lot of it seems to go into marketing now. It feels like companies raise big rounds simply so they have a press release to say they raised a big round. Maybe there'll be a bank that gives a loan that isn't actually real dilutive capital, and then but it looks like a round, and now Forbes will take you seriously. I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of things going on right now with the attention economy, where it is a lot about how much attention you get to your company. One thing that I noticed with the AI wave is that unlike cloud and mobile, the AI wave doesn't come with a built-in distribution channel. So you don't get an advantage for starting an AI company today that you used to get when you started a mobile or a cloud company or a SaaS company, because nothing's changed with the distribution. So that means people are just shouting louder and louder and trying to vie for our attention. So the question is really, in this attention economy, how are you going to get attention? How are you going to... That to me feels like a bigger problem really than the technology in some ways. And sometimes raising a round can help solve that problem. So I think there's a lot, the power dynamic has shifted. The reasons for raising capital have shifted. The amount that needs to be raised has definitely shifted. For example, if you figured out distribution, you probably don't need to raise money anymore to scale. Yeah, that's true. And I don't know what big VCs do with their big doshes of cash, honestly. Maybe they'll just pump money into companies later and later stage, and we'll end up having companies never go public, which is also dangerous. So it's a very interesting time right now. And if I were in VC, I would probably be trying to figure out where to go where people are not going. Maybe I'd be investing in things that are not AI, because I think some of the companies that are not AI are having more trouble raising rounds. But there might be some really great companies in there. So it's an interesting time, but I think it really depends on the situation.
But do you have your goal in your mind for, let's say, for Quill Meetings? Is your goal like IPO, M&A, or you want to keep independent as a company? If you grow.
It's fun to run an independent company that's growing and making money. It's kind of the way it used to work. Let's see. I don't know what's on the cards for us. I think we're quite happy with the state of the company right now, and we are, building every day, and that's fun. It's super nice to wake up every day and see what you did the day before, and to see customers who are using your product every day. I think that it feels so good. So to me, that's what I love doing, and I've never done it before at this scale. So it's just super fun, and where it all goes, I don't know, but we're not going to run out of money. So we don't need to fundraise, which is great. And we'll see whether we decide to raise another round, or we're getting pulled into enterprise quite a bit now. So that might be a new path for the company as well. But it's nice to keep options open. I think that's what founders can do these days, is just have a lot more options. So it's great.
Amazing. And this is, by the way, this is a broad question, by the way, but nowadays, AI is crazy, and people are using so many AI tools. But do you have any thoughts on recent AI snapshot, like a work, job, skills needed in this era, or you mentioned like a mini manager in Ali.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I do.
AI-powered tools.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? The current generation of AI, it's kind of like a junior employee. So sometimes it gets things right, and sometimes it doesn't quite understand and gets things wrong. So because it's a junior employee, the skills that are needed these days, I think, are managerial and experiential. It means that people of my generation are actually an advantage because we can make judgment calls and we have experience. Junior employees are definitely, real junior employees are at more of a disadvantage because they won't necessarily have the skills that fill the gap between the AI and what's needed for the company. So I think gaining that experience, I think if you're young, is going to be important. Whether you start your own thing or whether you work for a company that's using AI, but becoming a sort of mini manager of lots of agents and figuring out how to call them out and make the right judgment calls, that's really going to be the big skill of the future, I think, because I don't think AI is going to take all of our jobs at all. It'll just make us more productive. And the people that will make most productive are the people who know how to use it the best. And the people who know how to use it the best are the people who have the most experience with whatever the AI cannot do, and being able to guide it, right? So that I think is sort of shifting the workplace quite a bit right now. And you know, Mike and I and our few employees can just do so much, you know, with AI now. It's kind of amazing.
Do you use any AI tools in your daily work or your personal life?
Yeah. I use Quill, obviously, and I also use Cursor a lot. I like Cursor. I haven't tried Windsurf a lot. I know that they're similar, but Cursor has been really, really great, especially in the last 6 months. It's really come a long way. So yeah, get a lot done with that. I love the agentic feature within Cursor. What other AI tools do I use a lot? Not a lot of others, actually, day to day. No. Coding and productivity, meeting productivity are the two ones that I use a lot. Oh, and I do use ChatGPT too. ChatGPT for me is like Google now. So yeah, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but feels like it's kind of going to replace Google as a place you go to answer any question and get results. So we'll see where all that goes. I think OpenAI is talking about advertising as a business model, so that means they're definitely going after, or they're beginning to feel the crunch of you know, they have enough users, and so what you have to do eventually is you have to start to think about advertising. So we'll see.
Yeah, I use pretty much the same AI tools: ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude, and I prefer Windsurf. But yeah, I know both, but I use both. But yes.
Yeah. What do you prefer about Windsurf?
Why?
What do you prefer about
Windsurf? It's kind of UI, UX. It's a slight difference, I think. Hard to tell, but yeah. And also some of my friends are like Windsurf and use Windsurf, so I can ask some question to them. So I think that's the reason, I guess. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, we're in a whole new era, right? Companies are growing very, very fast. Some of these companies, the people I talk to seem to think that the steam might run out at some point and they kind of reach a cap quite quickly. I'm not so sure. I feel like these are generational companies that are getting built in AI. So it's a very exciting time. It's a really, really exciting time. You know, where a company of 10 or 50 people can get to $100 million in ARR in 2 years. That's exciting. There's something new happening now. And that it makes me feel a little bit, maybe a bit of FOMO for not being an investor, because it does feel like the .com times. It feels like 95, 96 right now. It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah. Thank you. So, okay, two more questions, and one is advice. And do you have any advice to, let's say younger self or aspiring founders or engineers?
Any advice at all?
Any advice? Yeah.
Yeah, I think just build, just build. You know, build and sell. I do think that marketing is more important than I had realized. And I would say, you know, build and have an adventure, but also don't be naive to distribution. Yeah.
Oh, I remember like there's a famous saying like first time founder focus on product and second time founder focus on distribution. And yeah, it's interesting. So okay, yeah, the last question. Since Glasp is a platform where people share what they're reading, learning as a digital legacy, and we want to ask you this question: what legacy or impact do you want to leave behind for future generations?
Yeah, I very very low bar, very low goals here. Nothing exciting. It was fun being an investor, and maybe I'll be an investor again in my future. But the joy you get from building product that people use and they tell you they like, and you can see they're using in the analytics, is like nothing I felt before. And I would love to just grow the company I'm building or a future company very large, that I'm having a positive impact on hundreds of thousands or millions of people. This is a wonderful feeling and a great privilege, and to be able to influence people, and but also just to give them benefit through something you've built and designed is such a privilege. So that's all I would like to be able to do. Yeah. And that's the mark you leave. And, ultimately, I think that, people die, blah, 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 but what you leave is everyone you touched. And then they will have something in them, even if your product dies in 50 years or whatever, and then they've benefited from it. So I think the web of life means that you're always giving back something. And if you can give back to lots of people, that's really a great privilege. That's all I want.
Very beautiful, and I feel the same. And yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for joining today. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.